Right, let me start recording first. It is recording. Indeed, it is. Let's kick things off with the slides for today. They're all over the place. There are two slides for today because number one, we have to understand custom hooks. I repeat, the first thing we have to understand is custom hooks. The second thing we have to understand is recoil. We'll see if we're able to reach the recoil bit. We probably might be able to. But we can go very deep in this custom hook rabbit hole because one common interview question, too, you might see this from time to time. There are a lot of custom hooks that you can create. So we'll try to see how many of these we understand today. If we understand all of them, and then there are more in this library called use hooks, then it will take us the whole day. If that happens, we'll defer recoil for later. If we're able to do this in, let's say, 45 minutes, then we'll do some recoil today as well. Let me give you the slides of both of them. These are the slides for custom hooks. Zoom, where is it? Where is it? Oh, there you go. Chat. These are the slides for custom hooks. The first thing we're doing today. The second thing we might be able to do today would be recoil. These are the slides for recoil. So feel free to go through either of these. How many of you, let's start with the poll as always, already know all the hooks that are mentioned on the screen? Maybe some of the hooks also, even though all of these are complicated hooks. So do you already understand this? Okay, majorly no. 80% no, 20% yes. That probably means this is a very new concept because usually the distribution is 60-40. So let's get right into it. We're at 8:05 here. We're going to understand about custom hooks in React. What are hooks? If you remember, we understood about the use state hook. We used it to maintain the state. We understood about the use effect hook. Today, we are learning something called custom hooks. What did use state let you do? It let you store a state variable, re-render a component when the variable changes. That is what use state lets you do. What did use effect let you do? Use effect let you run an effect whenever a dependency changes. If you don't understand either one of these, you should go back to the previous classes where we have discussed use state and use effect. Today, we are learning about custom hooks. The name itself is giving it away. We are going to write our own hooks. We are going to write lock screen.
Wrong screen. You're sharing the OBS.
I'm sharing the OBS. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Benefit of being in office, I must say. You guys might be seeing something parallel though. Alright, sorry about that. Oh, I usually have very shady stuff open here, so good for me. There we go. I think this one's right. Today, we're learning about custom hooks and the name itself is giving it away. Writing your own hooks. That is what a custom hook is and very popularly asked during interviews. How do you write your own custom hook? It is nothing but a function. You write a function. The only condition is it should start with use. What makes any function a hook? Number one, it should start with use. So whatever we are creating today, let's say use debounce, needs to start with use in the beginning. And secondly, whenever you create a custom hook like we are today, it should ideally use another hook under the hood. It should use another hook inside, something like const value comma set value equal to use state 1. Something like this. And then let's say it returns the value over here. This, I should probably call this use value. This is a custom hook that I have written. It is a function that I have written. It starts with use over here. It uses another hook called the use state hook inside. You can never create a function, a normal function. For example, let's say get value. which uses a hook. There is no point of a normal native function using a hook under the hood. This thing that you see over here is not valid syntax, good syntax, ever used, ever created, ever you should write. Never should you write a native function that uses a hook under the hood. If you are using a hook, you are either creating your own custom hook, or you are using the state variable, or you're using the hook inside a component. That is also fine. If I have a function called counter component, here I can create a state variable or use a hook more technically. This syntax is fine. This syntax is fine. This is a custom hook. This is a component. Let's say it returns, a div or something. So this is a component, uses a hook, we're good. This is a custom hook which uses a hook, we are good. This is a native function called getValue that uses a hook. This is bad. This is wrong. You should never do this. Never can you do this. Okay? This is bad, this is right, and this is right. Today we are understanding how can we create these custom hooks. Why do you need them? What are the popularly available custom hooks? Let's start with a very simple example. Let's try to create a use counter hook. Let's try to create a simple counter application and try to define our own use counter hook. You guys might already have some hint from here. Okay, something is happening over here. This probably is the use counter hook. Let's try to code it. Step 1, initialize a fresh React project. So let me go to projects/cohort 3. Here run npm create Vite @latest. What are we running? npm create Vite @latest. Let me give my project a name. week 11, right? React 1. Let me select a framework over here. React. Let me select a language, JavaScript. We are good to go. So cd week 11 React 1. Let me open this in Visual Studio Code. Just initializing a React project, hoping it's fairly simple. You've done it many times now. File, open. I think the pace at which we're going, we'll only be able to do custom hooks today, but that is fine. Let me clear out the app component over here and simply return hi there from here. Maybe put it inside a div. Simple. Let me get rid of this count state variable as well. This is a simple React application. If I run npm install, it will install all the dependencies in my code base. If I run npm run dev, it will start the React project locally for me. If I now open this in the browser, I see hi there written over here. What did I want to create? I wanted to create a counter application. Do we understand how to create it already? First, create a state variable, const count, set count equal to use state 0. Add a button. When you click on the button, it should call another function, let's say increase count. And what am I doing in the increase count function? I'm setting count to be count plus 1. This is one syntax to do it. This is another syntax to do it. Either is fine. And I'm hoping you understand both the syntax now to update a state variable. In our case, It increases the value of this state variable. To recap, defining the state variable over here, defining a function that will increase the value of that state variable by 1. Let me comment this difficult implementation. Let's just look at the easy implementation. Set count to be the original count plus 1. And a button, let's say increase, is written over here. And let me also render the current count over here. So I see something like increase 0 on the button. What do I see? Increase space the state variable. When I click on the button, what happens? This function gets called. Count gets set to count plus 1. It becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have a simple counter application. Does it use custom hooks yet? It does not use custom hooks yet. How can we introduce a custom hook over here? Harkirat, why do I need to introduce a custom hook over here? You don't need to. You never need custom hooks. But you never need functions also. Why have we until now made our applications very structured? Why did we write a function sum which takes 2 inputs and returns a plus b? We could have simply, written this logic directly in the other function that is calling sum. Why do we encapsulate our application so well? It's just good, right? If you have encapsulations, you can recall that logic again and again. Similarly, over here, increase count function, when it is called, we call set count, count plus 1. You can do logic like this, or you can create a custom hook, a function which has repeated logic encapsulated. उसमें आपने कुछ logic encapsulate कर दिया है. Use counter. What does this use counter custom hook do? Again, what have I introduced here? A custom hook. What was a custom hook, if you remember from the slides? Oh, wrong slides. A custom hook was a function only which starts with use. Our function starts with use, uses another hook. Our function also needs to use another hook, and then returns some value which changes based on this hook. So can I take both of these functions and move them in here? Just trying to encapsulate logic, just trying to put similar logic in a separate place so I can reuse the use counter hook. Our hook uses another hook. That was one of the sort of properties of a custom hook. Our hook starts with use. What should our hook return? What does the app function need? It needs the increase count function. It needs the count. So can I return the count over here and the increase count? Something like this. What am I doing? I have defined a use counter hook which maintains the state variable. This is a state hook, mota mota. It is a hook that maintains the state for you. It is a very simple custom hook so that you don't have to do it directly in the component. अब component देखना कितना साफ हो जाएगा. The component looks so clean. Const count, comma, increase count equal to use counter. Doesn't the app component look very clean now? A single line of code, which was previously 5 lines of code. Harkirat, but you've written it over here. Yes, I have. But I can always take this as a black box. If I'm a UI engineer, I can be like, theek hai, use counter gives me the counter, I will use it. I don't have to dive into its syntax unless need be. Same as functions, right? If there is a function called sum, I can look at the name and signature and tell what it does. I don't have to look at its implementation. And similarly here, use counter is a custom hook that we only wrote. But now that it is written, the app component looks so clean. It has count, increase count, which comes from the use counter hook. Button on click calls increase count. And the button that you see over here has a count variable rendered over here. So it's just a cleaner way to use other hooks. That is what a custom hook is. Again, to recap, create the state variable, define the function, returned the function as well as the state variable from here in an object, destructured the object over here, and then used it just like we were. I can totally copy this logic and paste it over here. If I don't want to use the use counter hook, I can move that logic here, or this is just slightly cleaner syntax to look at. So, do we understand our very first custom hook? A state management custom hook. A hook that I can now use in various components. I will very soon define another component where I will use this use counter hook. But let's just do the poll first. I don't know if it has started yet. There we go. Oh, we don't understand. We do understand. Beach mein 85%, 84%, 83%. Let me do 1-2 more things. Then I will take some doubts. Then we will proceed to the list of hooks for today. My guess is we are not doing any recoil today based on the current poll. So इतना भी cover हो जाए बहुत है. This is a lot to cover today. So if you were here for recoil, feel free to drop off. If you want to learn all of these, let's continue. I told you guys, I have created a use counter hook. It is like a function. I can reuse it. If I define another component यहाँ पे, the app component renders the count, the button, everything. What if I define or declare another component called counter, let's say. I declare a component called counter where I again use this hook. In fact, let me just use this hook over here. Const count, increase count equal to use counter. And then let's have the button rendered over here. Something like this. And now in my main app, I can render the counter component multiple times. What have I done? Created the use counter hook, created the counter component that uses the use counter hook. And this does its standard thing, which is as you click on a button, the count keeps on increasing. So if you look at the final application now, I have 4 buttons, counter, 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 counter. First one has, what will happen when I click on the first one? Will all of 4 of them change their state, or just one of them change their state? I am using the same hook, use counter. Does that mean there is a single state variable that is created, or 4? There are 4 state variables created. This has its independent state variable. This has its independent state variable. Because, as I said, defining this custom hook is the same as putting this logic over here. Same ही चीज है. You can put this logic, get this logic from there, or you can define it over here. अब यहाँ पे करोगे तो every counter has its independent state variable, right? This has this state variable, this has state variable, so on and so forth. So that is why when you encapsulate logic in a custom hook, you can use it across components. Now I can define a counter 2 component, which let's say does the same thing. Or you can change the logic a little bit. But the point is, this line did not have to be repeated. I did not have to put 5 lines of code here, 5 lines of code here. The hook was repeated in both the places. That is why you use hooks. Very similar to functions, you use it to encapsulate some logic together. Let me look at Q&A for a second before we proceed. Seems like slightly dilly-dally, but I've explained it again. I'll just spend like a minute on Q&A, then I will proceed. Your screen is lagging. We built a course app. I request you to build the front end for the course app. Oh, okay, sure. Slides, finally Q&A. Bhaiya, stream khali hai. Oh, proceed. Notes. No questions? Getting more confused. Oh, quick recap. Quick recap for everyone. A few people are saying stream is lagging. All right. One quick recap, then I will proceed. The quick recap is, today we are supposed to learn about custom hooks. Custom hooks in React are a powerful feature that allow you to encapsulate and reuse stateful logic across different components. What am I doing? I have encapsulated and reused some stateful logic across counter 2 component, across counter component. In both of them, I am using the use counter hook. The question is, how do you create your hook? I get that it is a powerful feature, Harkirat, that allows you to encapsulate and reuse stateful logic. But how is it doing it? And the answer is, कुछ कोड था जो आप यहाँ लिखते. There would have been some code that you would have written in both the places, in this counter component also, in this counter 2 component also. That code you have encapsulated and put over here in the use counter function. So this use counter function, or more technically, the use counter hook, has helped me encapsulate some logic that I am reusing here and here. Question is, what is that logic? And the answer is just a state variable and an increase count function. These are the two functions that this exports, the current count and a function that I can then reuse over here and here. So the people that were saying dry run, here is the top level component, app, it renders counter, and let's say counter 2. When it renders counter, it creates a fresh state variable over here using a custom hook. When you click on the button, this increase count function gets called. Where does this come from? It comes from the custom hook over here. इसके अंदर है वो logic. If I scroll up and try to see, the function is defined over here, which calls set count with count plus 1 for this specific state variable. So that is how the 3 buttons are rendered, one after the other, are getting state from a custom hook. If you did not understand this, let's try another one. That is all we are going to do today. Write a bunch of custom hooks. So let's try to create a hook called use fetch. Yesterday in the Web3 class, I took you through a library called TanStack Query. Some of you might have heard of another library called React SWR. This use fetch hook is again common interview question and also something done in these libraries. ये जो libraries है, libraries like TanStack Query, what we discussed yesterday in the Web3 class, use or create something similar to this. तो अगर ये नहीं समझ आया, that is fine. Let's clear our screen and create a more functional, a more usable hook called use fetch. When you are in an interview, they will not give you any more context. They will say, create the use fetch hook, and sort of you have to figure out /no कि ये करेगा क्या. What would the use fetch hook do? Let's think. अभी तक, how do we fetch state from a backend? I have emptied my code on the left. If you look at the code on the left, here only hi there appears. Let's try to build the use fetch hook. How do we do fetch until now? Let's say I ask you to fetch this specific post over here. JSON placeholder .typecode.com/posts/1. I ask you to send a backend request to get back JSON from here. This JSON, and then maybe render it on the screen. How would you do it? You might say, Harkirat, this though I know. We will create a state variable, let's say data, set data equal to, or let's say post, const post, set post equal to use state. Initially, let's say an empty object. It is an empty object initially. Then you might say, Harkirat, when the app component mounts, when this component gets mounted on the screen, which means when this use effect would get called with an empty dependency array. अब ये अगर नहीं आता है, if you don't understand this part, then you need to go back a few videos and understand how use effect works. But if you ever want to hit a backend from a component like this app component, you have to put that fetch call over here. You have to put that fetch call to get the data from the backend over here. What should I do over here? I can either fetch from this URL directly, something like this, get the response, store it in the post state variable. That will complicate things a little bit, which is why I am just going to call a function here called get posts, which I will define right above it. The reason I did not write the fetch logic over here and moved it to a get posts function right above it is because you can't make this function async in React. In React, you can't make the use effects first argument async. And since I wanted to write async logic, async await syntax, if you remember, I moved the logic to a separate file, a function, which is an async function. यहाँ पे I can write the standard code to get some data from the backend. Const response equal to await fetch, let's say this URL. Oh, oopsie daisy. Something like this. Then const JSON equal to await response dot JSON. And then let's say return the, or more technically, set posts to be this JSON data. Is this clear? It might not be clear to a few people, so I will restart from the top. I defined an app component, defined a state variable over here, created an async function called get posts, which hits the backend, gets the data, converts it into JSON, and calls set posts, this function right here, to update this state variable. This state variable will now hold what? It will hold this object right here. So after this runs, this object gets put in this post state variable. Where am I calling this function? I am calling this function inside a use effect, because हमें पता है कि if there is a component that renders, the first time it renders, the first time it mounts, then whatever you have put inside this use effect's first argument gets called if the dependency array is empty. अगर ये empty होता है dependency array, तो जो भी logic यहाँ लिखा है, whatever logic is written here, gets called when this app component mounts. That is exactly what we want, which is why this code will get the post in this state variable, and then you can render whatever you want, let's say post.title. What all did the post have? It had a title, body, ID, user ID. I am just rendering the title. If I refresh, you will see the title of that post over here on the screen. And how is it happening? Define an empty state variable, define a function that hits the backend and gets the data, updates the state variable, and inside the use effect, call that function so that the backend request happens and the state update happens. Eventually, render it over here. Do we understand this? Let's do a poll. Do we understand what I've done on the screen? Before we move on to the use fetch function or the use fetch custom hook, thankfully we understand this. So if we understand this, what did we do in the last slide? We just moved a bunch of logic someplace else, no? All of this logic, what do I need? I just need the title of the post. और कुछ मुझे नहीं चाहिए. why is all of this post fetching logic, this logic to fetch the post inside my component, this looks so ugly as a UI engineer. मैं बैठ के ये थोड़ी debug करता रहूँगा कि oh, this is the function it got called. So difficult. What if I create a custom hook which you can do in a separate file also? You don't necessarily have to do it in the same file. Let's try it in a different file. Let's create a folder called hooks, and inside the hooks folder I am going to introduce our use fetch hook. What have I done? Hooks folder use fetch.js, and here I am going to export function use fetch, where I'll just copy over all the code, right? There was a bunch of code over here. I want to move that to a function. Only that function is called a hook. And of course, that function re-renders a few other technical details. But mota it's just moving all of this logic into a separate function. So let me copy all this logic, move it to the use fetch function. And what should I return from here? I just need to return the title ideally. But chalo, let me return the complete post from here. If I wanted, I could simply return the title, and I could have renamed this to use post, let's say, something like this, or use post title more technically. So I have a custom hook called use post title that returns me the title of the post and handles all the logic of hitting a backend server and getting back the data. How can I use the use post title hook? How can I bring this to my code base? I have exported it from this file. Let me import it over here. Const post title equal to use post title. The import came by default. Import use post title from /hook/use fetch, and let me render it over here. What do you see on the screen? Nothing you see on the screen, because I'm missing something obvious. We'll see what that is. Post title is this thing. I'm sure you guys have already figured it out. If I refresh, no request goes out to the backend. Oh, do you guys see it? Should have gone to the console. Use state and use effect are not defined. So I moved the logic here, but I need to import use state from React. I need to import use effect from React, right? Put the right imports over here. Refresh, you see the title. What is the benefit of doing this? Okay, the code is present in a separate file called use fetch. Harkirat, why is it called use fetch? We'll come to very soon. But it's in a separate file which exports this specific hook. You use that hook over here. You might ask, Harkirat, why not make it a function? Why can't I write get post title? Why are you calling it a hook? Because you can't create functions that use hooks under the hood. If you are using a hook, you are yourself a hook, and every hook starts with use. So use post title is what comes over here, and that is what you have to use over here as well. And then of course you render the post title here. How many of us understand the use post title hook? If we understand this, then we will look at the use fetch hook. Do we understand the use post title hook? How are there people who understood the last thing but not this one? अगर आपको ये समझ आ गया था, if you understood this 90% understood, then now that I've copied this logic to a separate file, that's the only thing I did. इसको मैं दूसरी फाइल में ले गया inside a function and used it directly over here. So how come there is a 7% drop off in understanding this? I've just moved the logic to a separate file, right? That's all I've done. To a separate function more technically. I can bring this function to my here as well, but I've just moved that logic into a separate function जहाँ पे मैं ये सब कर रहा हूँ. Now ये normal function नहीं है बस. The only thing about this is not a normal function. This is a custom hook. That is the only difference. Everything else, think of this like any other function you have created until now. Look at Q&A for just 2 minutes, like a minute. Then I will proceed. Why JS file? Oh, when you're creating hooks, you can create JS. You can also create a JSX file. Either will work, if that was your question. Is it necessary to use in-house hooks or maintain custom? Is it good practice? It is good practice. Also, in-house hooks, maybe do it, maybe don't do it. It's fine. But the problem, the thing is, we are building up to something. These are important hooks to know of. These are just kiddie hooks we are creating for now. Recording देख लेंगे वो लोग. चलो ठीक है. Let's proceed then. Let's create the actual use fetch hook that I was talking about. अब हमें क्या करना है? The thing that we are creating, इसको हाइड कर देते हैं थोड़ी देर के लिए. The custom hook that we have to create now is called use fetch. And for the first time until now, it will also accept an argument. Very important. We are now creating a use fetch hook. I don't want to use profile title. I don't want to use user details. Use fetch, a generic function जिसमें आप URL भेज दो, send it a URL, it will send a backend request, get back the response, return that data. What is the use fetch hook supposed to do? The use fetch hook will take a URL as an input. Let's say this JSON placeholder URL. It will take this URL as an input. That is what the input over here is. And it will return a state variable that, let's say, gives you the details of that. It gives you whatever that backend returned. It is generic. It doesn't give you post. It gives you some data. Now for this endpoint, it is a post. For a different endpoint, it might be something else. But it is a generic. What do I mean when I say generic? कि ये कुछ भी दे सकता है आपको. It can give you anything based on the URL you are passing. अब if you pass it this URL, it will give you this JSON. If you pass it something else, it will give you something else. So let's see this in action. The use fetch hook is taking a URL as an input. What do I have to do? I have to create a state variable, const, let's say final data, comma set final data equal to use state, let's say an empty object. And I want, whenever this hook renders for the first time, that is what this use effect does. I want to get details. Let's say I want to call a function called get details. What is this function going to do? Number one, I am going to define this as an async function. I am going to define this as an asynchronous function, जहाँ पे I will send a fetch request to the URL. I will send a fetch request to this URL. जो यूजर ने मुझे इनपुट दिया है, the user gave me a URL as input. I need to fetch that data from that backend, right? So where am I fetching the data from? From the URL that the user gave me. Harkirat, what if the user gave you a URL that looks like this? Then it is the user's fault, right? उसको सही देना चाहिए था. They should put in a good URL over here. So const response equal to await fetch and then return response or whatever. Sorry, const JSON equal to await response dot JSON return JSON. Something like this. Simple enough. सेम ही चीज़ है वैसे, इसमें और इसमें कोई फर्क नहीं है. देयर इज नो डिफरेंस बिटवीन देम. ओनली दिस वन इज अ मोर जेनेरिक वर्जन ऑफ दिस गाय राइट हियर. इसमें आप कोई भी URL दे दो, इसमें द URL लाइज इनसाइड दिस स्पेसिफिक हुक. व्हाट विल आई रिटर्न फ्रॉम हियर? I will return, लेट्स से जस्ट द फाइनल डेटा कि बैकएंड से क्या फाइनल डेटा आया. Compare this function that we have written. Oh wait, I returned it over here. I should do this. Set final data JSON. Compare this function to the function written above. यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा था? I was sending a request to a specific backend. यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? I am sending a request to a generic backend. जो भी यूजर ने दिया वहाँ request भेज दिया. So that is what the use fetch hook is. It lets you take a URL as an input, get back the final data, all from inside a hook. Why is this good? Because now in app.jsx, I can simply say use fetch and give it the URL, which let's say is this URL over here. Const, what was this use fetch exporting? It was exporting something called final data as an object. So I can destructure that object over here. And then I can render it. I just rendered the object as such. You can do final data.post whatever, but I've just, in 2 lines of code, I was able to do something that would take me a lot of lines of code. And I created a generic fetch component. अब if I want it for post 2, all I have to do is this. There is still a bug here. But this is almost very close to what we want, which is a very nice use fetch hook that returns you the data as a variable here, and you can just render it. These are things that libraries like React, SWR, or TanStack Query provide you. A lot of companies use them. We also discussed this yesterday. A lot of other libraries also use them. It makes your code very easy. You can either use these libraries or you can define your own functions. Depends on you. यहाँ पे we have written all the code ourselves. Or we could just use the SWR library and there it would give us a hook like this. Okay, use SWR. Give me the URL. I will return you the data. So you can write it yourself. You can depend on an external library also. Let's see, does this work? It does work. I get all the JSON from here and it gets dumped on the screen over here. Let me refresh. Notice I get back the data. Initially it is an empty object if you notice. Initially it is an empty object. Eventually the full object renders. Why is it initially an empty object? Because use fetch में I initialize it to be an empty object. थोड़ी देर में details come back, and when the details come back, I finally return them from here. That is why you see a flash of an empty object over here. We will fix that very soon. Do we understand this? There are few things to fix here, but do we understand the use fetch hook? Let's do a poll, Akash. I can get rid of the other one. ये सबको समझ आ गया. अब इसमें गलती क्या है ये कौन बताएगा? What is wrong in this approach? Who will tell? Why is this approach not complete right now? Let's look at Q&A if someone has figured it out. A few people said create gist. Loading an error. That is not the error. Try catch. That is not right. Yes, someone put the answer there. It's basically, it will not work in this case. Let's say I do this. In my app component, I say यार ये जो final data है ना, let it come from a dynamic backend. Let me do this. Const current post set current post equal to use state 1. Okay, the user is right now on the first post. Let me put a few buttons over here. Button post number 1. Button post number 2. Button post number 3. On click equal to. If you don't understand this syntax that I've written right now, don't be overwhelmed. It basically means when the user clicks on the first button, this variable becomes 1. When the user clicks on the second button, this variable becomes 2. When the user clicks on this third button, this variable becomes 3. This state variable right here, current post. And now I am saying कि यार ये जो data आ रहा है ना, I want it for this base URL / the post ID. I want to give the user the option to move from one post to another. If they have clicked on button number 1, they should see the data of the first button. If they have clicked on button number 2, they should see the data of the second button, so on and so forth, of post ID 1, post ID 2, post ID 3. This code should ideally do that. There is a state variable that is defined to 1. When I click on the second button, the state variable becomes 2. And now this URL also changes to become 2. Why is the use fetch function not returning me data of the second post? इसकी implementation देखनी पड़ेगी जाके. We understand कि components re-render as state variables change. अगर आप इस पे क्लिक करोगे, this component would re-render with current post set to 2. If you click on this, this component would re-render with current post set to 3. What does re-rendering mean? It means ये function पूरा फिर से call होता है. So this use fetch function will again get called. I can also confirm this. Let me open the use fetch function on the side over here, and let me log URL here, console.log URL. Let's see क्या ये बदलता है. Does this get called every time I change the current post variable? When I click on 2, 3, oh, nothing happens. What am I doing? Oh, use post title. Shouldn't change anything though. There you go. I see post number 1. When I click on 2, can you see the log for post number 2? When I click on 3, can you see the log for post number 3? मतलब क्या है? मतलब ये use fetch फिर से कॉल तो हो रहा है. Use fetch is getting called again with the new URL. वही तो लॉग किया है यहाँ पे. But ये फंक्शन कॉल नहीं हो रहा. It is not sending a request to the backend. Why? Because I've said run this on mount. जब component पहली बार render होगा, run this. I have not said कि run this whenever the URL changes. This is where the dependency array comes into the picture. I have not said कि यार जब URL बदल गया ना, component तो same ही है. It is still the app component. It has just re-rendered. इसमें बस ये वेरिएबल चेंज हो गया. तो यूज फैच के अंदर भी ये वेरिएबल चेंज हो गया. दिस वेरिएबल चेंज्ड. एंड वी सेड कि अगर यूआरएल बदला है देन रीफेच डेटा फ्रॉम द बैकएंड. बिफोर वी वर सेइंग कि व्हेन द फर्स्ट टाइम दिस माउंट्स देन रन दिस. नाउ वी आर सेइंग एनी टाइम द यूआरएल चेंजेस देन रन दिस. एंड दैट विल इंश्योर कि हर बार एज आई क्लिक ऑन अ न्यू टैब, a new data, it hits the backend, gets back the data, updates the state variable, that state variable renders over here. So if I click on 2, new post came, click on 3, third post came, click on 1, first post came. Now it works. Now this is the correct implementation of the use fetch hook. What have I changed? Just added URL as a dependency over here. Why did I have to add it? Because it is not necessary कि जो भी कंपोनेंट इसको यूज कर रहा है, आई रिपीट, इट इज नॉट नेसेसरी whoever is using this component, they might change this URL from time to time without unmounting this. This component might re-render and then pass in a updated value over here. अब ये updated value आई है तो you need to do things again. You need to call the get details function again. You might say किरत तो ऐसे ही कर दो यार, इतना कॉम्प्लिकेट क्यों करना है? Call it always. You can't do that. If you call it always, तो यहाँ control आएगा, it will update the state, it will re-render the component, then control will reach here again, then it will update the state, it will re-render the component. You will be stuck in an infinite loop. तो you have to say कि अगर URL बदला है, then run this logic. Do we understand the right implementation of the use fetch hook? If we do, इसके बाद it's hopefully a simpler path from here. Let's do a quick poll. आ गया मोटा मोटा, ठीक है, ग्रेट. तो अब दो चीज़ें बची हैं इसमें, सिंपल थिंग्स. If you use any of these external libraries, you will see these external libraries give you the data, but also give you a variable called loading. So that on the UI you can show कि यार ये load हो रहा है अभी. अभी what happens? You see a flash for a second. For a second, you see just the 3 tabs and an empty object. Just a minute second. We want to fix that. We want to ensure कि शुरू में एक लोडिंग आ जाए, थोड़ा स्पिनर आ जाए, कुछ सुंदर सा आ जाए. सो वी वॉन्ट द यूज फेच हुक टू रिटर्न दिस लोडिंग फील्ड एज वेल. सो वॉट लॉजिक कैन आई चेंज हियर? आई कैन एड another state variable here called loading, and I can say request जाने से पहले, before the request is being sent, or even initially, loading is set to true. Set loading to be true. And after the response is fetched back, after everything comes back, set it in the state variable, set loading to false. This is what we want. And यहाँ पे I will return not just final date, but also the loading state variable. What did I do? Introduce the new state variable, said that it is true initially. Whenever this function gets called, it is reset to be true. Then we do the backend calls. Then we set it to false. Why is that good? That is good because अब जब request जा रही है, when the request is going out, this variable is set to true. After you get the response, this variable is set to false. So during that 0.1 millisecond window, you have this state variable that you can use over here. ये loading variable कि यार if loading, अगर data भी आ रहा है, then maybe return something like a spinner or something like this. Loading ... Cool. Let's see it in action. If I refresh, I see loading first. Again, it comes for many minute seconds, so you don't see it. But now I see loading. When I move from one post to another, I see loading for some time. Then I see the next post. Third post, loading for some time. Then I see the next post. Slightly better UX, right? If I did not have the loading field, then clicking on this button के बाद भी 3 second बाद data would come. Or initially you would see a very bad flash. Now you see loading, बढ़िया एकदम. Then you see this. So this is another way to make your use fetch function better. There are 10 different things you can do here. Another thing you can do, let me just give you, that's the next hook in the slides as well. The next hook in the slides is use fetch with refetching. Use fetch with refetching. कि यार what if the data in the backend changes? क्या पता post 1 update हो गई हो. Maybe this is a real time application. I am updating this post app from my, whoopsie daisy. I was not on screen for a really long time. I think from the beginning of the class. In myself. All right. What I was saying was, what if I updated this post from my mobile device? If I do that, that change needs to come here as well. So what if I keep polling the backend every 10 seconds? Every 10 seconds, I resend the backend request and get back the current data. Can I do this in my generic use fetch function? क्या मैं logic लिख सकता हूँ यहाँ पे ऐसा कुछ कि यार when the component mounts, start a clock, set interval. Now this is a little confusing, I totally get it. What I'm saying is start a clock that calls the get details function every 10 seconds. There is one more thing I have to do here. I will leave it as an exercise, that is clean up. I need to clean up this interval as well. If you don't understand it, you should go back to the videos. But this one line of code will ensure that every 10 seconds we are refetching the data from the backend. Why is that good? Because अगर backend में कुछ change हुआ, I will see it in real time on the front end. I don't have to refresh the page. Now, if you open the network tab, you will see I sent a request here, but after 10 more seconds, I will send another request to the backend and just ensure कि कुछ change तो नहीं हुआ भाई. There was also a flash over here. We should fix that. कि loading, if it is loading later, we don't show the UI changing, but you get the idea. Every 10 seconds now, I'm refetching the data from the backend. You can make this more complicated. If you're in an interview, they'd ask you to do 10 different things after that. Okay, add an error state over here. Make the polling timeout, the retry timeout configurable. यहाँ से भेजने दो बंदे को 10 seconds. And use this argument that the user has sent. Okay, I want to hit this endpoint. I want to hit it every 10 seconds. Use this argument in the use fetch function. Timeout or whatever, retry time. Use it over here. Things like these. So, you can make it as complicated as you want. But let's just stop here for the use fetch hook. Oh boy. And let's proceed to the even more difficult hook for today. ये तो कुछ भी नहीं था वैसे. Use prev hook. घोड़े खुल जाएंगे. This one is really hard. And it is hard for 10 reasons. Biggest reason being this is wrong. And we figured this out 30 minutes before the class. When I was like, something feels wrong. And then Sargam was like, you are not wrong. And then he Googled this. And someone has explained this as well. So let's do a small break of 3 minutes. Sujit and Sargam wanted to say hi. They were here. They are here. If you have any questions for them, feel free to throw. 3 minutes question, Q&A, answering doubts. And then we will move to the harder hook for today. The use prev hook, which is, it's hard to understand. It's also wrong. It doesn't do what it says it does. Or, it does something else than what most people assume it does. And then we look at its right implementation in this very nice blog post that we found 30 minutes before the class. All right. Sargam and Sujit, if you're here, feel free to come. If not, I'll just look at chat myself. Do you have any questions for me until then? 3-minute break. We will restart at 9:04. आ जाओ भाई. All right. Face reveal. Sujit, what's the name of your keyboard? What's the name of your keyboard? People are asking.
Hi everyone. What's the name of my keyboard? It's Royal Clutch M65.
Royal Clutch M65.
Or maybe M75. I might be wrong.
Okay, got it. Nice. Any more questions? Sargam, some question came.
Oh.
Just moving too fast. Hi Sargam, hi. Oh,
Hi
never,
everyone.
Never mind.
Never mind. No question for me.
Hi Sargam, explain. let Sargam explain the use prev hook.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, who are they? They're students from 100x Devs cohort 2 mostly. All right. Cool. I think I don't mind actually.
Do you want?
Do you want to try?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'm always down for this.
Cool. Let's do this. Let's let Sargam explain the use prev hook that we haven't yet discussed. I have Visual Studio Code here. You can explain here. Try for 5 minutes or else I can take over.
Yeah, no problem. Hi everyone. I'm today taking the role of Kirat as an intern, so don't mind me. So let's go on. If you have any question, then feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll go from there. So now I'll try to explain use previous hook. So use previous hook is a hook in React that is used to get the prior value. You might be wondering where this is used, but there are a couple of cases I can't get them on top of my head, but this is quite commonly used in React. So I'll try to do one implementation of this. Let's go to sidebar. Oh my god, here it is. Let's create a new hook. Right click, new file, use -prev.js. Okay, we are doing it in JS.
Shared
See.
CM like really changed your file name.
Yeah. No. It's fine. Export const use brave equals to this thing, right? And what do we get? We get
You should explain what it's supposed to do with the diagram first.
Oh.
Go to Accelerate Raw.
Yeah.
Explain what it's supposed to do.
Damn, this is quite hard. Like, guys, it's not easy actually. So what use Prev does is, like for example, this is your React component and this is your state, right? So the most common use case for use prev is, as the name suggests, to get the previous value. So in every re-render, this state updates, and in case like you want to know what was the value of the previous state, right? For example, it was 4 before and it was updated to 5, right? So we have no way of tracking like what was the previous value in this component, right? So for that we use like use previous hook is used a lot. Like for example, I can think of like what was the last song that you played, right? There are like better ways of accessing it like through arrays and all, but this is one use case that I can see. So use prev is just used to get the last value of the state in React, and I'll try to do a demo implementation, but I'm not sure like how it does it work. But let's see. Const ref equals to use ref, right? And it will be undefined. Use effect. I'm doing an implementation. I'll explain it right after this. So we need the value, right? Like what value to put it inside the ref. So we'll get the value from the argument, and we'll update ref.current equals to value, and do this, and return ref.current. Okay, so one thing, this might be really hard to digest for most of you, because you might be wondering like how does this hook even works, right? Because I'm sending a value, I'm updating the value, and like how am I getting the prior value here, right? So what happens is that
First show it in action.
oh, show it in action. Yeah, sure. I'm new to this, guys, sorry. Should I
Clean it everything.
clear everything? Yeah. Sorry, Harkirat.
That's all good.
I hope like
Pretty good.
yeah, it's good. Const previous equals to use prev, right? Here we have it, and we should define a state, right? You don't have him. Const state, comma state use state, yeah, 0, and let's have like
Like a counter.
yeah, I was thinking the same. Have a p. What that the p will do, and next thing is the button. Button will have right click me. We should also have an on click operation here. Run and callback. What should do? Set state current. Yeah, this should work, and we might want to get the value like was prev, and we need to wrap it around let's say like this thing, React fragment. Let's do that, and control shift A, not control yeah, let's leave it here. I wanted to format it, but I forgot the circuit. What is it? I don't know. Oh my god.
Right click.
Format, right? Yeah.
Option F.
Pretty nice. So hi everyone, it took me a lot of time, I'm not used to this. So what did I do? I made a state, I made a count variable, and I made a set count variable. So what it is doing is, it is using use state and 0 as the default value, and whenever the button is clicked, the value increases by 1, and this will show the prior value. But one thing is that at the very first time, right, what will this value be? If anyone can say in the chat, I'll be like, I'll be happy, like you guys are really smart and all. How do you access the chat?
So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I mean, like at the first re-render, what will be the value of previous?
Most are saying 0, some said null.
Oh,
Some said undefined also.
undefined. Okay. Yeah. Okay, it's good. Okay, someone said null. Okay, I see. I'm like not able to read the name. See it in the video, by the way. So I see null as the answer. So most people said 0, right? Sorry guys, you are wrong. You are like not good for this. So if it was 0, then it will be rendered here, right? But the actual answer is undefined because we haven't defined what the ref is gonna be, right? Null is also correct, but like if we had passed null as the default value here, like it will be null, but no, it's undefined, guys, for the very first time. And whenever we click me, it's still oh my god, I thought the wrong thing, guys. No, I need to pass the value, guys. I was just checking like whether you guys were paying attention or not. Yeah, like let's do it now. Like see 0. Oh my god, oh gosh, it's not working.
What is not working?
Oh, it is not working. Why is it not working? Did I like not? Yeah. I see. Like we haven't updated the dependency, guys. I knew this. I was just checking you all. Like standard teacher stuff. See, guys, I make everything work in one go. Very nice. And if you have like any question, then feel free to drop it in the chat. How was my presentation? Should I do more of these or not?
Let's see. Should we do more of these or not?
Please do.
Everyone, guys. Yeah. No, oh my god. Guys, please say yes, guys. I'll make your life easier. Oh.
Cool. Yeah, guys, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Alright, that was me in cohort 1, struggling through classes and explaining them exactly like this. So you learn with time. Alright, let's understand the use prev hook one more time. Hopefully you understand what it does from the side. ऊपर से तो समझ आ रहा है कि चलो इसकी implementation अगर ना देखें, if we don't look at its implementation, let's try to understand what it is doing under the hood, and we can always understand the implementation later. Because even what it is doing is very hard to digest, and as he said, it is only used in a few places. I also, very late in my journey, one day had to reach this specific use case, and then I googled and copy pasted. Eventually functional components came, hooks came, and this is the right way to do it now. What is it supposed to do? It is supposed to show you the previous value of a state variable. If this is a state variable that is initialized to 0, then its previous value was nothing. If I click on this, what would happen? The state variable would become 1. Its previous value was 0. So if I click on this, state variable is 1, previous value is 0. That is what the use prev hook is supposed to do. Okay, as a value of a variable changes, if I click on it again and this becomes 2, what was this state variable's previous value? It was 1. That is what appears over here. If I increase it again, basically this is the current value, this is the previous value. That is what use prev is supposed to do. Okay, given a state variable, what was its previous value? Put that over here. That is the use case of use prev. Question is implementation, which is very hard to digest, and as I said, it is also wrong. The most popular implementation is slightly wrong. Even though it doesn't look wrong, everything looks fine here. There are mild, edge cases here that you should know. Let's look at the implementation that Sargam wrote. He said, whenever this component renders, Harkirat, please create a ref. Sabse pehle to. What are refs? We discussed in the last class only, I think, last to last class. Refs let you store a value in a variable, and whenever this value changes, the component does not re-render. What is a ref? When you use the use ref hook, this ref can be used to store a value, and इस value को जब आप update करते हो, कितनी भी बार अपडेट कर लो, अपडेट इट एज मेनी टाइम्स एज यू वांट, it will not re-render the component. If I had a state variable here, const ref comma set ref equal to use state, let's say null, and then eventually it changes. Whenever ref changes over here, whenever you call this component, this hook will re-render because it uses this value. But the use ref hook, whatever it returns, इसकी value में जो डालना है डालो, put whatever you want, it will not re-render any component. So I initialize a ref. I return the current value of the ref from here. Ignore this code from now. I initialize a ref. I return its current value to whoever was calling me. Who was calling me? This specific line of code. This specific line of code gave me the current state, and it is supposed to return me the previous state. This hook is somehow supposed to remember कि पहले ये क्या था, what was it before it changed to something else. So what do we do in the use prev hook? इसमें हम कहते हैं कि यार whenever the value changes, whenever the input changes, set that input on this ref variable. अगर ये 1 से 2 हो गया, if this the state changes from 1 to let's say 2, let's say this state variable changes from 1 to 2, I have a use effect जिसमें this effect will trigger because the value changed from 1 to 2. That will cause this ref.current to update. Will this trigger a re-render though? No. This will not re-render all the variables. This is a ref. This is not a state variable. So it will simply update the value to, let's say 2. And then we return ref.current from here. So do we return 2 from here? What was the input to this before? It was 1, let's say. And let's say I clicked on the click me button. So this input went from 1 to 2. The use prev hook में now the input is 2, but I am returning ref.current. पिछली बारी में क्या था? 1. I am returning it first, and उसके बाद ये use effect call होता है. To understand this hook very well, you need to know a property of React के it returns first, effect gets called later. जब भी ये कॉल होगा with some new value, whenever this will be called with some new value, the ref will be holding the old value and that will get returned first. वो पहले return हो जाएगी and then the use effect will run to update it to the new value. Let's see it in action. सबसे पहले this will get called with what? It will get called with 0. When this gets called with 0, what was ref? Ref will just get initialized. It will return undefined from here because it is just been initialized. If I put 1 over here, then it would have returned 1, but I have initialized it to undefined, so it returns undefined. Then the effect would run and put 0 as the value over here. So even though यहाँ पे 0 आ गई है, 0 return नहीं हुई. What first this line of code ran, then this line of code ran, then this line of code ran, and ref.current became 0. So what got returned? Undefined got returned from here. The key thing to know is कि इसके बाद जब this update happened, it did not re-render everything so that whatever ref.current changes, it did not re-render anything. Refs don't re-render when they change, which is why now a 0 will be stored over here. And now when I click on the click me button, this state variable changes to 1. It passes 1 as an input over here. Now 1 will come as the value. First, this line of code will just be ignored. It's creating a ref. It only happens the first time. Then this will return. What is this? It is 0 right now. It will return 0 to the initial component. And then this use effect will update its value to 1. So that is how the use prev hook runs. स्टोर तो ये करंट वैल्यू ही कर रहा है, इट इज स्टिल स्टोरिंग द करंट वैल्यू, बट सिंस दिस लाइन ऑफ कोड रन्स आफ्टरवर्ड्स and this line of code runs first, the old value gets returned back to this component right here. That is how the use prev component works, and this is what it looks like. If I refresh, 0 over here, 1 over here. This is the current value of the state variable, this is the older value of the state variable. पहले ये थी, अब ये है. Where is this used? Oh god, I'm trying to remember the use case where I came across this. This was when I was building very first website in React, in some class-based component. I totally forgot if I'm. It becomes handy in some use case where you have to remind or remember the old value. So for that, this is used. Very common interview question. You would answer it with this, even though this is wrong. This is indeed wrong. If you think use prev returns the previous value. It doesn't. It returns something else. We'll get to what that is. But do we understand use prev hook thoda thoda? What it does? How we have rendered it? How it works under the hood? Even though it's just 7 lines of code, it's very hard to digest. Purely because ये नहीं समझ आता. तो do we understand this? ये नहीं समझ आया, घोड़े खुल गए. कोई बात नहीं. 74% understand this. For the 74%, I would say you should go through this blog post, which explains why this is wrong. This specific blog post right here. Life and death of the use previous hook. Let me post it in chat. And for the 25%, let me try to answer a few questions before we proceed. Let me recap first. I'm assuming most of you need a recap. And then we will see. The other two are simpler. This though is very easy. This one is a little bit harder. I'll try to take you through this as well. This I will leave it as an assignment. There are more assignments over here. But yeah, let's go through use prev one more time. I didn't expect you guys to understand it the first time either. So let me go through it one more time. Let's start with the functional requirements. Ignore how it works. What is it supposed to do? वो भी इतना मुश्किल है समझना इस केस में. What exactly is it supposed to do? It is supposed to track the previous value of a state variable. Here is a state variable. Its value is initialized to 0. If this value ever changes to 1, then this prev variable should become 0. If its value ever changes from 1 to 2, then its value should become 1. If its value changes from 2 to 3, then its value should become 2. If this value changes from 3 to 4, then its value should become 3. It should be right behind the state variable. कि इसकी पहले value क्या थी? What was the previous value of this state variable? That is what the use prev hook is supposed to do. Do we understand the requirement? अंदर से कैसे चलता है? We will see. Do we understand what is this hook supposed to do? I totally get if you don't understand ये use कहाँ होगा. And as I said, it is rarely used, but it is commonly asked in interviews, which is why it is good to know how it works. Do we understand what is use prev doing functionally before we dive into the code base? Akash, can we do a poll? I'm sorry, I'm bombarding with polls, but this one's important. So I want to know, at least requirement to clear hai na? Requirement is clear, almost 91%. What is difficult is the implementation. कि यार ये use prev hook अंदर से कर क्या रहा है? Let's see. It first defines a ref. Now some of you might not know what a ref is, but we discussed this last week. It is used to, let me show you the slides only. Let's read through what exactly is a ref. If you go to the slides from last week, you will see we discussed about in React, useRef is a hook that provides a way to create a reference to a value or a DOM element that persists across renders but does not trigger a re-render. It is a hook that provides a way to create a reference to a value. Ignore this part. Create a reference to a value that persists across renders but does not re-trigger a render, does not trigger a re-render. What that means is कि ये useRef hook जो आपको return कर रहा है ना, you can store a value over here. You can store a value over here, something like 0, 1, 2. But whenever you change this value, a re-render won't be triggered. All of your components will not re-render. That is what it means when we say that the ref variable over here can store a value, won't re-render. How are we using it? We said, इतना तो सबको समझ में आ रहा होगा. I initialize a ref, simply return the current value of the ref, which is undefined. I never change the value. If I do this, then I initialized it to undefined, returned undefined. What will be stored over here? Undefined always. But with one line of code, or 2 lines of code more technically, or 3, what does this do exactly? Suddenly it starts behaving the way we want it to. This makes sure ये logic run हो, this logic runs whenever the value variable changes. जब भी ये change होएगा, whenever control reaches here with this value variable changed, this line of code would run. When this line of code runs, it will update the ref to hold the current value. Let's put a few logs. Logs से समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. Let's put a few logs. Oopsie daisy. Let me put a log here. Re-render happened with new value, whatever this current value is. Returned ref.current. Updated the ref to be value. 3 logs I have put. So we understand the sequence in which this use prev hook re-renders. पहले ये run होगा, then this will run, and then this will run. What that will do is कि previous value return हो जाएगी, and then the previous value will get overridden to the current value. Let's see it in action. Put this on the left. Put this on the right. Refresh. When I inspect right now, what does it say? Ignore what it says right now. Let's change the value. It happens twice right now. Let me remove that. Let me go to main.jsx and remove strict mode from here. That will ensure it doesn't, render twice right now. That's something you can ignore for now. Now, let me refresh. Remove all the logs. Click on click me. What does it say? Re-render happened with new value 1. यहाँ पे control आया. Returned 0. Then the control came here. And lastly, updated the ref to be 1. Then the reference updated to 1. When I click on it again, re-render happened with 2. Control reached here with the value 2. Returned 1. What got returned from here? 1, the previous value. And then this updated to 2. So that since first this runs, then this runs, and then the value gets updated, you are able to return the previous value over here. कि इससे पहले जो value थी, जो यहाँ पे stored थी, वो हमने पहले return कर दी. Then we updated the variable to be the new value. That is how the use prev hook works under the hood. Do we understand this? Let's do another poll, Akash. Last poll, if it's less than 85%, then we understand it. 94%. Beautiful. Problem क्या है ये कौन बताएगा? Read through it. And this isn't, most people will answer it this way only, but there is a problem here. So, read through this, and I'm also happy to at the end of the class. Let's first finish whatever is left. There are 2 more hooks. This one's very easy. So let's see if you have to pick it up at the end. This one is again very hard. So let's finish this one. The use debounce hook. The only last hard hook for today. Because इसके लिए first you need to understand debouncing. Then you will understand the use debounce hook. Let's get right into it. Last hard thing over here. What is debouncing? We have discussed it once, so I hope you guys already know this. Debouncing is कि when you go to a website like amazon.in and search for something, if I type a lot of things together, it debounces the HTTP request to the backend. It doesn't send the HTTP request some 30 milliseconds until I have stopped typing. अगर मैं टाइप कर रहा हूँ बहुत जल्दी, it is not like it sent an HTTP request over here, then sent an HTTP request for PL to search the backend के what starts with PL, then sent a third HTTP request over here, then sent a fourth HTTP request over here, then a fifth. No, it said लिख ले भाई तू. First you type it out. When you move your hands, उसके 50 millisecond बाद I will send the backend request. To the visual eye, doesn't really, that 50 milliseconds doesn't matter. But sending too many requests to your backend, that is bad. So if I type something over here, if I'm typing really quickly, the request will be debounced until I move my hands. Question is, how do you implement debouncing? How do you make sure कि कोई फंक्शन जो है अगर वो बहुत बार कॉल हो रहा है, if a function is getting called too many times, तो you wait for the function to actually get called. रुक जाओ, let me explain this better. What we want is कि there is a function, let's say there is a function called search backend. It basically sends a request to the backend to search for a specific string. So, whatever, it does the fetch over here to api.amazon.com / whatever, your query string over here. This function exists. We need to implement another function. I repeat, I need to implement another function called debounced search backend. I need to implement another function. This function will be spammed with requests. इसको बहुत सारी requests आएंगी बार बार. But this function needs to make sure कि यार I will debounce the final function call. So this function will call the search backend function. ये already exist करता है. This has the real functionality. We want to implement this debounced search backend such that जब भी वो input box change होगा, whenever the user is searching in the search bar, let's say this is the search bar over here, then whenever the user types something A, तो a request went out to, or a function call went to this function. Now it's responsibility of this function to debounce the main call, to make sure कि यार अगर ये बंदा बहुत तेजी से टाइप कर रहा है, if this person is typed A over here, then let's say typed B over here, then again this function will get called. Then they typed C over here, then again the debounced search backend function will get called. And इसकी responsibility है कि I will eventually call this, but I will back it off a little. I will debounce the request a little. If the person is typing really fast, then I will wait कि they type the last time, and then I will wait for, let's say, 20 milliseconds after that, and then I will call the real function, because उससे पहले तो वो अपना he's just trying to figure out and type really quickly. So you will add some sort of an event like this. Whenever the input changes, input dot on change, let's say, you will immediately call the debounced search backend function. This is what your code logic would look like. This function gets immediately called. यहाँ पे हमें वो logic लिखना है that will debounce the request to the main function. This is the main function. This is the debounced function. Let's first write this. Then we will understand the use debounce hook next. पहले forget React, forget custom hooks. Given a expensive function over here, let's try to debounce the expensive function. Let's try to create a function that will call it call the expensive operation only some milliseconds after the last type. And if the user quickly typed something here, then it will again debounce the request. If during this 20 millisecond window, the user typed again, then we will wait for 20 more milliseconds. And then let's say the user typed again, then we will wait for 20 more milliseconds. If the user did not type for 20 more milliseconds, is when this function is going to call this function. Let's try to code this. No React, simple. Node.js, maybe we will code this. Eventually we will see how we convert this into a use debounce hook in React. Let me delete this. Create a simple Node.js project. Nothing too complicated. No React right now. There is a function called search backend. Console.log request sent to backend. Of course, in the real world, there would be a fetch request you would send over here to hit the backend. What we want to implement is debounced search backend. We want to implement debounced search backend, which will get spammed. Let me call this, 5 times or maybe 20 times, one after the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We want, क्या ठीक है, इन सब के लिए this guy will not call the search backend. For the last function call, it will call the search backend. Let's see, does that work? How can you write this logic over here? What do we want? We want कि यार जब भी मैं call हूँ, whenever I get called, I want to start a clock for, let's say, 30 milliseconds. I want to start a clock for 30 milliseconds. If during those 30 milliseconds, I get called again, then I will restart the clock for 30 milliseconds. So, क्या करना है हमने यहाँ? कि यार जब मैं call हूँ, I will not immediately call the main function. No. I will first start a clock for 30 seconds. Set timeout. 30 milliseconds, sorry. कि यार we do want to call search backend in 30 milliseconds. अभी नहीं, not immediately. I will start a clock. So what would this do? What would this do? एक minute. When debounced search backend gets called, it will call this and a clock would start. Care after 30 milliseconds, we are supposed to call this function. But immediately after, in less than 1 second, while this clock is running, the function gets called again. Now I need to stop the old clock. कि भाई ठीक है, you are not needed anymore. A new clock needs to be started 30 milliseconds from now. ये बंदे ने फिर से कुछ टाइप कर दिया. तो stop the old clock, start a new clock. This new clock will now wait for 30 milliseconds. While this was waiting, it got called again. So this clock also needs to be stopped. And then another clock needs to start 30 milliseconds from now. तो यहाँ पे I need to create a new clock and cancel the old clock. I need to cancel the old clock, create a new clock. Cancel the old clock, create a new clock. This is how you create a new clock. And this returns you a variable. Let's say, let me create a global variable called let current clock, which is initialized to undefined initially. And here I can say, here current clock is this thing. But before I create the new clock, let me cancel the old clock. Let me call clear timeout current clock. This will stop the old clock and then start the new clock and put the new clock in this variable. Up the current clock is set to this clock right here. This gets called again. So then first control reaches here and this clock gets stopped. Then a new clock starts afterwards, the fourth clock. That is what gets stored over here. This keeps on happening until the last render जहाँ पे जो clock run हो रही है, they keep on getting cancelled. They keep on getting cancelled until the last clock, where 30 milliseconds tak nothing happens, and then search backend gets called. So the way to do debouncing is start a clock and clear the old clock. The last running clock will call your function in a debounced fashion. That is exactly what we wanted. Let's see, does that work? When I run this, does the expensive operation run 7 times or does it run only once? It only runs once. It doesn't run 7 times. We can convert this into a UI also, very similar to whatever Amazon, and try to type it, but long story short, it will do the same thing. So do we understand implementing this given an expensive operation? If we do, the hook is fairly simple to build. Do we understand debounced search backend function? Let's do a poll. Decent. 88% is not bad. I think we can proceed. So given this, can you implement the use debounce hook? क्या करेगा ये? Given a function, send data to backend, that whatever does fetch api.amazon.com/search/whatever. Given this function, and let's say this function, there is an input box over here, type equal to text, where the user will search. We want to create another function called debounced send data to backend. So why not create a generic hook, const debounced function equal to use debounce, which is something we have to implement of this function. Kya given ye function, pass it inside a use debounce hook, which returns you another variable. This variable or this function is what needs to be called over here. Whatever, on change equal to, let's say, this function, something like this. Okay, when, or if this is easier to read, this also is fine. Whenever the input text changes, whenever the user types aggressively, don't directly call this, the debounced function. इसको call करो, जो कि खुद ध्यान रखेगा, and it will eventually call this guy. So how can we implement the use debounce hook? We have time. Can you try it out? 2 minutes. I will look at Q&A until then. 2 minutes may try to code this. It should use refs. I don't know. I haven't opened it actually. The solution, neither do I remember when I created the slides. So I think it should use refs. I could be wrong. Try to implement this. Until then, I'm going to look at Q&A for the next 2 minutes or so. Why does it return first? Is that the case? Oh, sorry. Why does it return first? Is that the case for hooks or applies to? That applies to rendering as well. I think in the component lifecycle, first it renders, then use effect gets called. I could be wrong on this actually, but to hooks it definitely applies. First the value will get returned, then the effect will get called. I think that happens in components as well. I could be wrong though. All of the code is in the website, or on the slides, the same code I'm writing over here, just implementing it myself. I guess one code that you're asking me to post is the debouncing code. Let me quickly create a gist and share it with everyone. Short URL. Almost done here. 1 more minute, then I will code it as well, and then I think we're done for the day. I don't know what happened here. yeah, it's not shortening my URL. Let me just paste it in the chat and also add it to the slides. All right, time to code it. Oh, let me see. Accelerator of when? Soon. Pretty soon, actually. Maybe like 2 weeks after we do Tailwind. We don't need Tailwind for Accelerator of, so you can do it before. Oh, well, we need WebSockets for Accelerator, so maybe not before WebSockets. Effect runs after the component is rendered. Okay, so that is true. So effect also runs after the component is rendered. Effect also runs after the hook returns. All right. I mean, I'm sure there's a better implementation here. Let me write down, how I would do it. I would first create a ref to store the, existing clock variable, the global variable that I had created over here, current clock. I will probably store that in a ref equal to use ref, because, this variable is going to change a lot, but I don't want my component to render based on this changing. That is why I have made it a ref. And I have not done this, current clock, comma, set current clock. I have not done this. I have done this. Why? Because I don't want my component to re-render whenever the current clock variable changes. I will create a effect. Oh. Yeah, I actually don't know how to implement this. Let me think about it. It also needs to return a function which will or whatever, let's say const fn equal to, I can write, let me write a very quick hacky way, but let's just look at the official whatever solution here as well in the slides. That might be a little bit cleaner. Fn something like this, right? Current clock clear interval current clock dot current, and then set in clear timeout, and then current clock dot current equal to set timeout, and call the original function after, let's say, 30 milliseconds. I think this is right, but I could be wrong. So we will see. Let's see this in action. I'll also explain this a little bit. Taking this as a black box, what are we supposed to do? Okay, given an expensive operation that hits the backend, an expensive function, let's say, I want to create a use debounce hook that takes the function as an input, gives me back another function called, let's say, whatever you want to name it. And whenever I change an input box, I want the debounced function to get called, which will eventually call this after some time. This is what we have to build. This is the implementation of it. We will get to the implementation. Let's see, does it work right now? If I open localhost :5173 and try to, let me open the network tab. And let me quickly try to type things over here. I think 30 milliseconds isn't enough. I think my fingers aren't fast enough. So let me make this like 200 milliseconds. So it's, we can actually see the thing over here. I have an input box, and if I type frantically, notice no network requests are going out. I move my hands, request goes out. I will try it one more time. Remove everything, request went out. Type frantically, no request is going out. Hands up, request went out. How did that happen? Because whatever code I had written on Replit, I sort of hookified the same code. And when you are doing that, the only thing to learn over here is, okay, whatever is a global variable in Node.js, you store in refs over here, because you don't want components to re-render when this changes, but you need its value when you want to clear the timeout. So what do? In this, I first defined a ref, then defined a function, which will first clear the old clock, start the new clock, which will call the original function after 200 milliseconds, let's say. And here I passed the original function inside to build this. Hopefully that is clear. Let's look at the, whatever official thing that's present over here, that looks much better than what I wrote, if I'm being honest. Huh. Yeah, this is also fine. Number one, this is slightly cleaner. It takes two inputs. Oh, it does something else only. Ignore this. Who wrote the slides? Did I write these? Oh yeah. This is a different thing. This is also a use case. Let me take you through it. This function will basically, this use debounce hook will do something else. This one, hopefully we understand what it does. But you might, when I was writing this, you might have thought, Harkirat, why have you not defined this as a separate function only? Why does this need to be a hook? And that is sort of a decent expectation to have. Yaar ye function hi bana dete na? Just like we had a function over here in Replit called debounced search backend. Why was I not able to create the same thing here? And the answer is sort of yes. You didn't really need a hook for this. The use debounce hook that we see over here is slightly different. Slides में जो use debounce hook है, that is slightly different. Let me take you guys through it. ये कुछ और करता है. ये क्या कहता है कि यार whenever there is a state variable that changes, I repeat, let me get rid of everything. This one's important, so like bear with me for 5 more minutes. This says कि यार आप ऐसा करो हरकीरत, whenever the user is frantically typing, right, बहुत तेजी से लिख रहा है user, you set a state variable here called const input val, comma set input val equal to use state. Let's say it's empty initially. As the user types something over here, update this input val state variable. So we can say on change equal to, let's call, whatever input, let's call a change function over here. And we say, yahan pe I want to set the input val to be e.target.value. Harkirat, what have you written over here? This one line of code will just take the thing that is present in this input box and put it in this state variable. If this feels jarring, even though I don't recommend, you can also do this id equal to whatever, input. And you can do something like this here, document.get element by id, input.value. You can do this also. कि इसके अंदर जो current value है, put this inside a state variable. You can do this, or you can say कि ये जो event हुआ है, whatever happened on this on change event, that is what this e variable over here is. E dot target is कौन से target पे ये event हुआ है. This and e dot target are the same thing, where e comes as an input here. जब भी on change call होता है input पे, whenever it is called, it gets an event variable over here, and e dot target dot value represents the current value inside this input box. You set this in the state variable. अब आपको क्या करना है? What you might do is कि whenever the input val changes, I will do my expensive operation. You might be tempted to do this. कि I will do the fetch जब भी ये value change होगी. But what you should do is use the debounced value, which comes from the use debounce hook. This is a different use debounce hook. पहले जो बनाया था different था. This is different. This one takes a value as an input and updates this value after some time. अगर ये input val बहुत तेजी से change हो रहा है, right? If this changes very quickly, this value will be debounced to eventually arrive at this guy. ये एकदम से update नहीं हो जाएगा. Use debounce hook will make sure कि यार ठीक है यार, let this value change quickly, and then when it stops changing for 30 milliseconds is when I will update this value. That is what use debounce, the implementation in the slides, is supposed to do. Then you can just use this value in the use effect कि यार जब debounced value change होगी, when this value changes is when you should do the expensive operation. Don't do the expensive operation when the original value changes. Do the expensive operation when the debounced value changes. Question is, how does this work under the hood? Use debounce काम कैसे करता है? Let's look at the implementation. What have we done in the slides? We say कि यार कुछ value आएगी. Let's create a state variable, initialize it to the value, and then whenever the value changes, ignore delay for now. यहाँ पे भी and यहाँ पे भी ignore delay. It says here, whenever the value changes, start a new clock and stop the old clock. If you remember this cleanup function, this runs when these dependencies change. First time when the control reaches here, सिर्फ ये call होगा. The clock will be created. Then if the value changes, first the existing clock will be stopped. Then the next clock will be created. If the value changes again, then the existing clock will be stopped. A new clock will be created. That will keep on happening. Eventually, the last clock standing will update the value to the current value of the input variable. That is how the use debounce hook works. And this one's even more generic. ये delay भी input ले लेता है कि यार how many seconds should I wait? 20 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds? Give me that as an input. Let's see, does it do what it's supposed to do? Copy this, go over here, paste the use debounce hook over here, and यहाँ पे I've used it. I've also said कि जब debounced value change होगी तब expensive operation करना. So let me do console.log expensive operation. Cool. Let's see, does that work or not? If I open this website, open the network tab, or sorry, whatever, console, एक बार तो expensive operation हुआ. The first time it mounted, this happened. Now let me type frantically. It is still happening. Debounced value equal to use debounce. Debounce value is being used over here. Input value is what is over here. Use debounce. Do you guys know why? Because in the use debounce hook, I repeat, I have to give two inputs, input value and the delay. कि यार 200 मिलीसेकेंड तक वेट करना before you update this variable right here. Wait for 200 milliseconds, then update this over here as well. Now if I refresh and I type frantically, hands off, expensive operation happened. Again, let me start typing, hands off, expensive operation happened. Start typing, hands off, expensive operation happened. So this use debounce was, different implementation. It takes a state variable as an input and some timeout as an input, and debounces this final value to eventually arrive at this input value if this input value is changing very frantically. Do we understand both the implementations of use debounce? Either way, we will have to call it is 10. I'm sure इसके बाद तो कुछ जाएगा नहीं दिमाग में. But to recap today, while the poll is being made, today we were supposed to understand custom hooks. Many of these you write yourself. Usually some of these you use. There are libraries like usehooks.com जहाँ पे logic लिखा हुआ है. You don't have to write it yourself. It's good to know how to write it. You will be asked in interviews. But you can always use a library like this that has exposed these rather than writing it yourself. We understood use fetch with refetching, use prev, and use debounce. This is the only one that is left. You should go through it. It's not too difficult to understand. Neither there's a cohort 2 video where we discuss this. Happy to post it. And then these are the assignments for today. Read about SWR and React query. Use prev is not correct, the implementation that we have seen over here, even though it's the popularly given approach in interviews. This is the better approach. And then This is the better use brief basically. This just comes from here. Actually, there's nothing over here, but you'll find it over here. You should also explore this, which has a bunch of these hooks already created for you. Cool. All right, let's do a poll, Akash, if you're here. I don't think you're here, maybe. Did we understand debounce, use debounce? Polls. Oh, it started. Oh, sort of great, 88%. It's beautiful. 85%, also tickling down. I'll answer questions after this. Please go through this as well. And then tomorrow, slides are already with you. Let me post them again. If you want to learn about recoil yourself, try to go through it before tomorrow. We'll also understand about memo when we are going through this, which is another, React API, but try to going through this. All right, try to go through this. Cool. Let's see. Let's start with the chat now. Let me open it. Post lecture soon. Trying my best. Hopefully by 1. Hopefully that's too much of a commitment actually. Maybe 3. Divines का code नहीं समझ आया सही से. If 90% understood, you should try a little bit after the class. Go through the recording. आ जाएगा. थोड़ा Google, थोड़ा go back to the recordings. You'll do it. MongoDB relations, Akash, make note. Please, we'll do it tomorrow. And if it is part of cohort 2, then let's just post that recording as soon as possible. Notion doc. Oh, by the way, class officially ended. So if you want to drop off, feel free to drop off. I'm just going through some Notion docs and doubts before I call it. Can you share some insight on games is hyped in Web3? I think they're hyped only. I think you asked the same question yesterday. Is returning from a hook component first, then executing use effect normal from line React? It is normal from line React. It is not special. It is normal in React कि ये होता है. In your previous implementation, when the function was being called, in my previous implementation, let me command Z a few times. This implementation, the function was being returned from here, debounced function, and it was being called whenever the input value changed. So this function, debouncing function, was being called over here, which under the hood would call the original function after 200 milliseconds. So this is where the original function is called. This is where the debounced function is called. Glimpse the last code. Okay, this one is the old use debounce, and the new debounce you'll find in the slides. Okay, Notion doc. Web3 assignment completed for minting a dApp for 100x people. I would assume this is on Ethereum. It's nice. Connect wallet. It's pretty good. What wallet after this? I've seen it in many websites. It's pretty good. This is a nice thing to do for everyone before the next class, because the next class will be interacting with some Ethereum smart contracts. That's exactly what this guy is doing over here. All right. I made an indie hacker starter. Any project ideas that I can build on it? Ooh, I'm about to record a video on project ideas. So I saw this somewhere. I don't know. Passively it came. I saw the whatever lad over here. It's good. What is it again? Accelerate India's journey with this indie's journey with a starter. Oh, it's like a starter plan. Okay, it's like base. No, yeah, it's decent. I won't pay for looking at it. Send it to me. I'll see it. Request access, or I can pay. I mean, I don't know. Was there some demo version I didn't see? Could you please explain how use transition hook works, and use hook is better than use context hook? Use transition. Why do I feel like I've seen this? It's a React update a state without blocking the UI. Ooh, that's interesting. Is pending, start transition equal to use transition? follow this thing and about select tab will call start transition and then set tab. So does it delay updating a variable without blocking the UI? Probably. I'm happy. I mean, I don't know. I will read through it and explain. This is what my first guess is. Okay, whenever you're updating a state variable, it can be an expensive operation which will block the UI. If this is that expensive operation that is going to block the UI, start transition, if you wrap it inside it, then this will get deferred until the thread is free. Is my guess. I could totally be wrong here. You know, the name, when you said use transition, I thought it was some UI transition or something like that. So happy to read through. Let me just read it in front and see if I can quickly figure out what it does. Call it as the top level of your component to mark some state updates as transitions. Okay. Use transition returns an array with exactly is pending flag telling you whether there is a pending transition. Okay. The start transition function that lets you mark a state update as a transition, which probably means mark a state update to update the state without blocking the UI. Basically वो state update थोड़ा बाद में हो जाएगा, but you know, to make sure the UI is not blocked. If at all, I could be wrong, but this is my guess. The start transition function returned by use transition lets you mark a state update as a transition. Yeah, they haven't really explained well what a transition is here, but here's my guess. You know, it is something that will eventually happen and not block the UI immediately. The thread will, you know, come back to it. Is my guess. I could be wrong. Okay, if you need to start a transition somewhere, you can wrap an update into a transition only if you have access to the set function of that state. The function you pass must be synchronous. React immediately executes this function, making all the state updates happen while it executes the transition. If you try to perform more state updates for later, you won't be able to mark it as a transition. Makes sense. The start transition. Okay, let me just see if someone has posted this in chat. Was my understanding of use transition correct? And you had another thing over there. I'll read through it. Or is it something else? Does anyone know already? No? Everyone's posting Notion docs. All right. Happy to discuss. There'll be a video on, you know, common hooks, use ref, not use ref, use callback, use memo, even though they're not needed anymore. So there I'll add use transition as well. Please review my custom context API. Oh, it looks pretty good. You have an image context and an image provider, which, load images from IndexedDB. Oh, very cool. Is this like, where's the final thing? Image context provider, valuable to images, and it would have been nice to see, you know, it being used somewhere. Use image. I think there's a hook over here. Where have you defined the use image hook? Oh, there you go. Use context, image context. There you go. So what does this do? What input? No, it doesn't take any inputs. My guess is it returns you something from the IndexedDB, specifically an image. Reads something from an image from the IndexedDB and returns it. Is that what it does? Seems like it. I would assume this converts it into base, like the image into base 64, that you can eventually get image. This probably checks, you know, is it already being fetched? Index. Oh, it doesn't like lazily load images into the IndexedDB. Sounds like that. This is the API endpoint that actually gets the image, but you're also persisting the images into, you know, IndexedDB somewhere. Where is that though? Set images happens here. Is there an effect that runs? There is an effect that runs whenever images changes to, you know, yeah, I get what it does. I built something similar in the past. You call whatever use image, pass it an image URL, and it will fetch that image, return it to you. Also store the image in IndexedDB. So in the future, very good implementation, very clean implementation compared to what I created for the same thing. Did you have a use case to build this? Why did you build this? Very nice. Yeah, it would be nice. Like show it somewhere here. After course, students hit a wall, eager to build something. I'm sure solution. Most of daily code by connecting to CMS. Yeah, it's not bad. We should do this like formally though. Like, don't build this ekdam se, you know, it might get lost. But should first decide what to build and then we should code it. Something along those lines we should do. So you hit the backend. Should it happen na ki course error aaye? It may or may not come, depending on how you've configured course. backend, it should happen na ki cause error I. Also, can we say custom hook? So it may or may not come based on how you've set the backend. Can we say custom hooks under the hood uses a React provided hooks so that our code becomes encapsulated and usable? Yes, you can exactly say that. Or other hooks, other custom hooks or React provided hooks. I understand useref, but आज थोड़ा confusion हुआ है. I understand useref store वाला without re-entering. That is right. It stores the value without re-entering. Sometimes it stores DOM values as well. Also, it requested, can you please upload today's class till tomorrow afternoon? I will try. And tomorrow afternoon for sure it will happen. But hopefully tomorrow, midnight only. All right, Notion docs. Iron.in clone, very nice. I think I saw this. Is this the bad one? Someone created a very bad clone also. Let's see which one yours is. Yeah, this is not the best one. I saw this in the morning only. Some basic things were missing. Yeah, it just broke like this. It's also in light mode. I think that at least the one that I shared was in dark mode. But either way, it's like decent, but like not great. Sorry, I missed a very big Notion doc. It was like too big, so I ignored it. Browsers router do not support new data APIs. Neither loaders or actions work on them. This is useful. Then it is useful to use them. By the way, what are loaders and actions in this? This has a lot of things. For example, the hash router I was talking about. What did you ask about? Loaders and actions. I will have to read just like you would. Loaders and actions where? In the routing library or someplace else? Can you ask again when it's open chat? Or just add more context to this question. I'll refresh. I was thinking of making a Web3 wallet where anyone can come send blockchain currency to anyone from their phone. Basically, each user's PH. I don't know what PH is. Phone number will be mapped to their public key. They may sound dumb, but this is a good idea. It's just that people who really have volumes in crypto and money in crypto will never associate their phone number to a public key, nor will they delegate their public key to a centralized person to hold currencies for them. They'll own their private key. They'll hold their private key. They will never let you hold their private key. What are some downsides of cryptocurrency if they don't have? What's the need of INR dollar currency? Yeah. No, it's government backed and we all trust the government. We elect a leader. What is the need of a prime minister? He's supposed to do whatever, take decisions with the taxpayer money and the money of the country and decide the future of the country. We all trust them to do it. Similarly, we all just trust the Indian currency to be the reserve currency in India and that's how we've been transacting. If tomorrow we all say we are not going to transact, we'll transact using gold, then we'll start transacting using gold. So it's accepted as a fact now. This currency originally was backed to something it's not anymore. So we just assume it's backed by something and keep exchanging it with each other. Please start making projects on web dev cohort. Board of theories. Okay, cool. That's a good idea. We can make projects. We have like a lot of projects to go through anyways, 10 projects, something like that. We'll do that very soon in Web3. And let me complete Tailwind and then we can do it in web dev also. Making web dev nodes using slides would be a better idea if nodes were uploaded ASAP. Yeah, slides are like very time consuming. I'm doing them from Web3 because Web3 are harder to understand. So please avoid white mode. My eyes. Okay, I saw this already. I think I saw this as well. Saw this. Oh boy, it's a long one. How do I configure ESLint so it doesn't return error? It's not very useful stuff. Like state variables not being used, and you can update the ESLint config to ignore a bunch of these rules. You'll just have to find that specific rule, or you can always precede it with an underscore if there is a variable that you're defining and not using, then the error will go away. In the blog post about UsePro, what could be the glitch button? That I wasn't able to understand in the error, because they were causing re-renders, the value doesn't change. So why does the use effect even run when the value doesn't change? Since it is in the dependency array. Okay, I did not understand the question. Let's go through the doc. Wrong one. Wrong one as well. Custom hooks. The doc. What was your question? In the blog post, what could be the glitch button? Where is the glitch button? Oh, this button right here. The button that causes the glitch. If I increase them, they work fine. When I click on it, both of them become 8. I have a similar implementation that when we were discussing this, I wrote, this implementation right here, which is very similar to what their glitch button does. I started to run a clock that would re-render this component again and again. Now, updating a ref doesn't re-render anything. But if I randomly re-render the component, it will now get the latest value. So their glitch button, what it is doing is most probably triggering a re-render, which is causing the states to go out of sync. Right now, current value and previous value are correct. When I click on this, it causes a glitch. Previous number becomes 15 again. Why? Because most probably in this button click, they re-render the component. So that is what the glitch button does. Yeah, exactly. It causes the re-render. So when which is the same thing that happens when you, in an interval, let's say every 1 second runs re-render the component. You are right in thinking, Kiran, the value did not change. This doesn't run, but it returns the current value. पहले क्या हो रहा था? This was running, old value was getting returned, value was getting updated. अब क्या होगा? This will run and the new value will begin to get updated. This will not run still, but the new value will begin to get returned, which is why I know this is bad when a re-render happens. Oh boy, I'm Spandan. Oh, Spandan. I thought it's like Spandanian. Okay. Currently a science student. I don't want to go down Krishna path of DSA. I want please give me some suggestions. Yeah, suggestion remains the same for everyone. It's GSOC is the best path for you if you're in your second year. How can you go into GSOC? Start looking for orgs already. It's 19th October, so I mean, it's a little too early right now, but feel free to do it and find contacts. Sometimes being early helps in GSOC. All right. Nifty filter button set your content based on the video you've watched. What is a nifty filter button? How does it work? It's super simple. Click on a filter button to find the contents you have watched. What does it do? Okay, filter button. What does the filter function do? Sorry, I didn't see it. Oh, watching it lets you see that. That's not too bad. Can't say it's super. I mean, you can always look at the bottom bar and figure out how much of this you have done. But it's not bad. Wasn't this very complicated for folders? I don't know. Let me read through your code a little bit. I would assume this will be really complicated for folders. I could also be wrong. Oh boy, that's long. All filters. Yeah, I don't think I have the metal capacity read through this right now. But it's not too many lines of code. Does it work with folders is something I am just curious about. How are you calculating how much, whether a folder is pending or done? Maybe based on the percentage, I would assume. It probably doesn't need to be in recoil. Happy to review it when I have, some metal capacity. Today was really grueling. All right. Limitations, just a heads up, the features are available on the folder. Oh, okay, you've written that. It's not available on folders yet. I would guess that's difficult. You don't have a way to track them. Exactly. Perfect. So yeah, let me review this again. It's a decent feature. It's not a 10x feature. I'm thinking what are 10x features. One 10x feature is, integrate daily code with this. Whenever the slides are, when a user clicks on slides, they're usually a Notion doc or there's something on projects.100xapps.com. So it would be nice if, my video is here, I click on project and the project appears right next to the video. That's a good 10x outcome I can think of. Video over here, slides over here, I can go through the slides. Just put an iframe for now for project.100xapps.com. Something like that would be nice. It's like a 10x thing. This is also good, but fairly simple right now. Cool guys, we will call it here. Thank you everyone for joining. Tomorrow I will see you when we get into Recoil, do some state management and go from there. Next week we should do Tailwind, then build projects as many as you want. 4 weeks we can build, not 4 weeks, for 2 weeks we can build projects after that. Because React, state management, Tailwind, backend. So what's left is building projects after that. So 1 more week, bear with me. The next week we'll do Tailwind, then we'll go from there. All right. Oh, TypeScript is a good question. We should probably do. I mean, let's try to do projects first, and then we'll go from there. I'll pick up a few more Notion docs. TypeScript also should be done first before we start writing projects, if I'm being honest. But chalo, we'll defer it. Someone wrote forms, very big forms code. What is the question though? Is it really that big code? Forms took me 2 days to display the table. That looks good. Why did this take you 2 days though? If you're a beginner, it'll probably take you 2 days. That's fine. To build what you've built over here. Form code. You have a same question. I saw this already. how are you in the class if you are not seeing this? What's your email or phone number? What's your name? Something you should put here so I can. Oh, there you go. Invoice number is here. ठीक है, Ruki will contact you on your phone number very soon. Alright. Cool, we'll end it here, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye. Have a good night.